Fully operational. Fully engaged. On the horn. Hartford. onthehorn.com.
Turning the sound on is a good idea. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Moore. You're listening to News Talk Tonight on the Horn, onthehorn.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm joined by my co-host, Brian Lee.
How are you?
And we are brought to you by Amazon.com, Gateway Financial Partners, Sanders Travels, Sherpa Technologies, Budwitz and Meyer Jack CPAs, Deepwater Seafood of Avon, and CentralCTDental.com. Well, we had some fun happenings in Connecticut yesterday.
I heard all about it. I heard it was causing a traffic nightmare in the West Hartford area.
91 was shut down from
The airport, right?
Hartford up to the airport.
Yeah.
And what was interesting was they also said that the president landed in East Granby. That is actually true. There's a portion of Bradley International where there is the old National Guard.
Yep.
That is where Air Force One landed, okay, because it was a secure area.
Right.
But yes, we had the President of the United States in our humble little state.
I have to find out if I can find the speech that he gave because I never got a chance to hear it last night.
It was old time politics and old time revival, baby.
Nice.
It was he did a pretty good job of getting the central issue out that more needs to be done.
Yep.
That Connecticut has done a great job with the new legislation, but more needs to be done. And then it turned into shades of Campaign 08, shades of Campaign 12. I mean, he fired these people up. Now, when you think of Connecticut, do you think of the church folks who are going, hallelujah,
No.
the hands raised?
No.
Yeah, no.
That's the last thing I think of, actually.
3,100 people were in the University of Hartford arena,
Okay.
for lack of a better descriptor.
Yeah.
Their sports center.
Yeah.
And he had them standing and hollering half the way through to the end. Okay. And he had the pregnant pauses. He had the come down low, bam.
Wow.
It was old time delivery. This is Connecticut.
And Campaign 08 he gave that one of those type speeches at the Civic Center.
Yep.
And one of my buddies who knew nothing about him at the time, he's like, "I'm sold." It's like that. He goes, "That man can speak. I am sold." So, oh yeah, if he's on his A game, he's as good as he gets.
Oh, there is no question about it, and there's also no question when you listen to him. Yeah, okay, he's reading a prepared speech.
They all are.
But there gets to be a point in time when he wanders off the reservation.
Oh, definitely.
And for most politicians, you got to worry when they wander off the reservation because you just don't know what's coming out of that mouth. Not with him. He knows exactly what he needs to say, how he wants to say it, and when he needs to say it. That he's got down pat.
Yeah.
And it was, I saw half of the speech. Didn't know that it was, I thought it was supposed to be like a 10-minute, hi, how are you? Fly in, chopper out, it's all good.
Really?
This 28 minutes.
Wow. That's a long, long speech.
That's a long time for the president to be in one place at one time. And he then proceeded to take 10 of the families from Newtown who were at this event back with him on Air Force One
To D.C.?
to Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow.
to talk to the Senate.
And when is that?
They're
Tomorrow?
doing it now.
Oh, are they really? Okay.
It's kind of one of those whirlwind things.
Okay.
And it is their fond hope and belief that they can kickstart certain things.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking off air about how what were the prospects, and basically Nobody knows. Why does nobody know? Because the NRA has been thrown all in on the federal level.
Right.
They could give a rat's patoot about what's been happening at the state level. They know that that's lost.
Right.
And as you had pointed out, they're picking their battles.
Right.
But I'm not, it's not quite the same. In the old days, at this point in time, where it looks like certain provisions are being pulled and other provisions are kind of sort of quietly being tabled, you knew, game over.
Yeah.
The NRA has won.
Right.
Nobody's prepared to say that's the case now. And that is what is different from all the other times past. From when Aurora happened.
Yep.
From when Virginia Tech happened. Okay, there was widespread outrage. There were immediate calls in Washington to do something, and nothing happened.
This is different because of the age of the victims.
26 and 7-year-olds. And, you know, part of what the president basically was saying last night was, or last evening, was, if we don't do anything, if we do nothing, that in and of itself is a crime to the memory of these victims.
Sure.
Wow. Now, the other thing is, once you have some of these parents testify in front of certain committees, it's going to be very hard.
Oh, God, yeah.
To negate what one of the NRA lobbyists called the Connecticut effect. The Connecticut effect, he essentially was saying, was this widespread emotional knee-jerk reaction.
In the immediacy of that.
In the immediacy and the horror.
Yep.
Unlike other instances, Aurora, Colorado was bad. You thought going to a movie theater was safe.
Yep.
Virginia Tech was bad. You thought that going to a place of higher education was safe. This strikes right at home. These are little kids going to school who had minutes before been playing Foursquare outside.
Yep.
And now we're dead. And you can't get around that. And I know that we've had conversations with our good friend Brian Parker several times about how you shouldn't make law when you are emotionally embroiled.
And I agree with that.
I do generally agree with that. However, there are times when you need to strike while the iron is hot.
That's very true.
And we have yet to truly address, why did the assault rifle ban expire? And why has both the House and the Senate been unwilling to take up the assault weapon ban again? We thought it was a good idea at one point.
Right.
And by the way, when did that get passed? The assault rifle ban was 1994.
Right. Okay.
And it expired in 2004. Shock, shock, surprise, surprise. George W. Bush was president of the United States. I can understand why there was nothing from the White House that would have promoted that. But you still had Senator Feinstein. You still had, at that point in time, Senator Biden.
Right.
And you had this really classy representative from Long Island whose husband and son were gunned down by the subway guy. Shocking. It appears as though we have a guest. And who could that be? News Talk Tonight. Would this be Brian?
Hello, is this News Talk Tonight?
Suddenly I feel like I'm transported to WTIC.
Yeah, I want to tell you, Governor, I love you, Governor, and everything you're doing is great. And I hope you're very good, Governor. I love you. And I don't mean in like,
Brokeback Mountain way.
in a sexual way. Purely plutonic.
Of course, that caller was calling about Blagojevich. But anyways.
I love Blagojevich and I love Roland. Together they can make beautiful babies.
Yeah, they can't run for office, though. That's one small problem.
That's all right. They're all on the take anyway. You know how wealthy those kids would be? Oh, never work another day in their life.
Although I will say that a felony conviction didn't stop Bernie Newton from trying to run for the Senate down in Bridgeport. But, generally speaking, once you've been convicted of a felony, you don't want to really run for public office again.
Kind of tough. Makes it tough.
Particularly when it's...
But that's just in Connecticut. Well, wasn't Marion Barry arrested for cocaine like 500 times?
Yes. And reelected as mayor 800 times.
There was one...
It's a short term.
Another person that was reelected while they were still incarcerated, which I'm fascinated by.
That I need to look into. Wow. Now, that is the definition of chutzpah. Trust me, you know where I am.
How can I do anything wrong? I'm behind bars.
Not like I'm going to be able to go anywhere.
I just won't be able to vote for the, when
anything.
Congress is in session.
So anything big happened in Connecticut politics today that might have put us on the national stage? Anything at all?
Not today, but yesterday. Yesterday we were visited by the President of the United States.
Yes, all of our roads were shut down.
Yes, 91 in particular was all the exits between Bradley and Hartford were shut down. Quite a number of people were upset.
I would have loved it if he had gotten pulled. First thing you need to know about presidential motorcades, one, they're very loud.
Yes, 26
two,
sirens.
They do not obey the speed limit whatsoever.
They do in Washington D.C. They will follow the speed limit to the mile per hour.
Really?
But once they're on the highway, forget it.
No.
Okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you're going around in a big limo, you can't really take can't take a 30-mile-an-hour country road turn at 70. But I'm talking about 91. They're going at least 90 miles an hour.
Oh hell yeah!
And the reason, of course, is it's hard to take a shot at them.
Yep. Now,
fascinating.
when I went to school in Washington D.C., you could always tell who was going by the volume of sound. Okay. Committee chair people would get like 6 sirens. It was kind of like the old Roman fasces. The more fasces you had, the more power you had. The more sirens you have in Washington, D.C., the more power you have. 26 sirens make a really freaking loud sound. And when they're driving 30 to 35 miles an hour, it's a long, undulating sound. That's why when Reagan got shot, we knew something bad had happened because it was the same sound, only doing 70.
So I'm actually fascinated by a story I heard about that, which is, I can't remember which way this goes, but like around town in D.C., when the president goes, it's either the president or the vice president, I can't remember which one it is, but one of them gets a lot of sirens and one of them gets no sirens whatsoever.
President always gets sirens, so it's got to be the VP that gets nothing.
Yeah. The only time I saw one of those motorcades in real life was in D.C. with Dick Cheney, and I just sort of happened upon it because I was walking around D.C. and I was walking around the mall, Washington Monument, and I saw Marine One and 3 of its cousins all land at the Washington Monument.
Oh wow!
Then I see this big convoy of cars, this motorcade come in. And for some reason, I don't know why, but I have no memory of if there were sirens or not. I don't know. But I'm looking around, and there's not a lot of people around, but there's a few of us tourists hanging around. And the Secret Service comes in and block off a certain area, and they go right up to the Washington Monument where the Marine One helicopter is, or whatever it was, and there goes Dick Cheney hopping on, carrying his own umbrella, man of people, gets on board, takes off. The other two take off, and then, like, I'm there, I'm watching this, paying attention. This is the first time I've ever seen a president or vice president in person. The 3 helicopters take off. They all spin around the Washington Monument, and then, like, 4 other Marine One clones come in and do, like, this, like, aerial acrobatic dance, and then all take off in different directions. And I'm like, what the heck just happened? I had no idea. So I'm asking the Secret Service guy, because, I'm chummy and I don't mind getting shot. I'm like, what the heck was that about? Like, is this like an air show or something? He goes, no, that's so they do a particular move. So whether you're on the ground or you're watching via satellite, they mix up, visually. They kind of all do a little jumble, so you don't know where the vice president is. And then it's coordinated that even if you're on like a satellite image watching, you won't know which of the blips has the president, because they'll be crossing over and stopping and then all going off in different directions. I was like, I didn't know that.
It's kind of
an aerial shell game.
It's exactly what I was thinking.
It is. It is the biggest, most expensive shell game ever played.
The thing is, they don't do that anymore. They only had to do it for Cheney because they were worried that someone really did want to kill him.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, that's the only time I've ever seen it. I've never seen it before. I mean,
I do know that when the president is traveling, particularly in the D.C. area, by air, that they will have the real Marine One plus 2 decoys. But rarely would they ever do something like that for the vice president. In Cheney's case, however, since he was the shadow president, it was kind of understood you didn't want to lose him. That's why the old big joke, vice president was in an undisclosed area.
Location.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'd be interested to know if when Air Force One flies, there's a shadow Air Force One that flies right behind it.
No,
I don't know if that's international or if they also do that domestically, but it would be interesting to know. But I assume the press up here, since we're so starved for national attention, would have noticed the second Air Force One landing.
Normally, what happens is they have a second plane that is on reserve in case something happens to the first, so that they can effectuate a fairly quick transfer. It's not a shadow plane in that this is, okay, which one is which. It's not to create the confusion. It's more along the lines of, and it's usually when Air Force One, the real one, is close to its service time. In other words, it needs maintenance, etc.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they will have the shadow plane kind of dogging them, although not directly behind them because the jet wash is horrible. But and that is primarily done internationally. It is not done that much domestically unless, like I said, Air Force One is about ready for a trip to the shop.
Huh, that's interesting.
They do try to maintain the service in such a way that the service protocol doesn't interfere with the president's schedule, but that doesn't always happen. Jets are funny about that.
Yeah. When you need an oil
To
change,
be like the Bradley International Airport, since we go to Canada, the tower, the person manning the tower.
Yeah.
I mean, pilot comes on. This is Air Force One. Clear the vector for landing. You'd be like, oh, this is cool. Like, can you say hi to the president for me?
I have a sneaking suspicion that when the president arrives, the regular ATC guy ain't in the seat. It's some major.
I doubt that. Why would you want anyone else in there other than the person that does it every single day? I think you want that experience. You want that. You want that person who knows the local area.
Yeah, I'm thinking
knows where the flight traffic is going to come.
Air Force major who's not going to give a crap about what the normal flow of traffic is, because at this point in time, the normal flow has been shut down, anytime that you have a
Yeah, but if
president,
something happens, you don't want some dingbat from Washington who's an aircraft control guy up there. No, I think the regular folks do it. We could inquire. We could always call. That
may
can't
do that.
possibly be classified info since you can listen to the traffic. if you
True.
want. Actually, I don't even know. I wonder if they have a. I mean, you can listen to the traffic, but I don't know if they have a secure channel.
I would imagine that they do have a secured channel,
I
only
have no idea.
so that you don't broadcast what the plane's going to be doing next.
Right.
But it was interesting that it was noted that the president landed in East Granby, which, since the Air National Guard strip happens to be primarily in East Granby, was accurate. We're used to Windsor or Windsor Locks being Bradley's designated town, but in point of fact, the Air National Guard's in East Granby, and that's where he landed. He did not land on the normal airstrip.
Yeah.
Which is why I was kind of playing with the idea that you probably had some Air Force top brass guy actually bringing them in.
Probably.
And because the president is flying, I believe it's a 20-mile cordon, 10 miles on either side of the flight path, is shut down. And if somebody thinks about venturing in, you suddenly see either F-16s or F-18s
Scrambled.
At your wingtip saying, "You're going down."
Yeah, I don't have a great perspective. I've done a little flying in the Coast Guard, but I don't really have a good perspective as to what 10 miles looks like. I mean, can you grab some binoculars and look at Air Force One if you're just flying around?
You could.
Can you look 10 miles and see it?
Think of it this way. When air traffic controllers are describing visibility, if it's unlimited visibility, it's 10 miles of visibility.
Mm-hmm.
10 miles of visibility, you can make out something at 10 miles away, barely. But that's the Rubicon by which they go by in figuring out whether you're under visual flight rules or instrument flight rules. If you have less than 10 miles, you're more likely to be an instrument. So, yeah, you can, but you can't see 20 miles. Not so easy. So if you're on one end and the president happened to veer off to the left 10 miles, you're not going to see him. But 10 miles away, you can. You just can't get a radar lock on your, handheld Stinger.
No, I don't know. I don't have a handheld Stinger, Dave. Don't say that kind of stuff.
Well, according to
Anymore.
Governor Malloy, you never will again.
Hey, so I'm thinking I should probably read this gun law bill that we have because I got a little nervous last night talking to some friends that I might have to do stuff
Yeah.
to become compliant.
Registration, of various things. Ammunition.
I mean, but really?
Yeah.
Like this, I don't know. I just can't. I mean, what do you do? Like, do you have to send in a report? Like, all right, I went to the range today and I fired, 85 bullets. Like, do you have to do that? Like, are they going to do an inventory check? Like, I don't understand practically what is the gun owner supposed to do?
My understanding, and this is a simplistic understanding because I have not read the statute word for word, but my understanding is that if you have the ammunition, you register that you have it. You do not necessarily provide them with an inventory. Okay? If you sell it, you have to indicate to whom you have sold it. And under most circumstances, that person would be subject to a background check. That is so for both the sale of ammunition as well as the sale of weapons, guns.
That is so odd. I can't even. I don't know. So if I blow through if I fire off my 9mm and I have no more ammunition, there's going to be some weird state database that says I have 9mm ammunition, which I don't.
I believe
Like,
that
I
the
don't
following
understand
year,
practically what the heck that does for anybody.
I believe that the following year you would, because you had registered before, you would register again, indicating you no longer are in possession because of personal discharge.
God, I gotta register my inventory every year.
No, I'm not saying that you have to tell them how much you got. I'm just saying if one year you have it and then the next year you don't, you just got to tell them how come you don't, and then you don't have to register anymore unless you buy some more.
So if at January 1st I don't have any ammo in my house, and on January and I register and I tell them that I don't have any ammo,
Yeah.
and then on March 2nd I buy a bunch of ammunition, do I have to wait until the next year to?
I believe that the gun shop or the purveyor of the ammunition would indicate that you are the purchaser of the ammunition, and then the following reporting period, which I believe is probably going to be in December, you would then register that you now have possession of this ammunition. And you would indicate from whom you purchased it and when you purchased it. And they would then match up.
Weird.
They would then match up the records, and everything is hunky dory. It's when the records don't match up that they start getting concerned, and will investigate further. And they'll go to the person who last had it.
Weird.
Where can you find this new law? Is it online yet?
I believe if we go to our friends at ctnewsjunkie.com, they do have on their myriad of stories, they do actually have the final version of the bill that got passed.
Okay. Because I want to read it too. I don't own a gun, but I still want to know what the law is.
Right.
So.
And
But neither of you guys have pistol permits or shooters, right?
No.
Nope. Have I shot a gun before? Yes.
Yep.
And would I have any problem with someone having a pistol permit? No, not at all.
Doesn't this just make gun ownership, the experience of gun ownership, something for the wealthy? Because this is just going to drive up the cost of ammo, drive up the cost of guns, and make it incredibly expensive to buy it legally. And then now we're going to have commodities out there on the black market, the street market, that are even more valuable.
Yeah, except for the fact that if you get picked up for selling stuff on the black market, you go into jail for a really long time. 15, 20 years.
You think these drug dealers are afraid of that? They laugh at that stuff.
Yeah, but this...
You could give them the death penalty. Who cares?
Well, they wouldn't...
You know, if that's what we're concerned about, which is not really what happened in Newtown, but if that's what we're concerned about is the drug trade, you could have people, immediate beheadings. You could have the death penalty. That's not going to be a deterrent for the drug trade.
The fact of the matter is, we are dealing with a very dangerous instrument. It is as dangerous as the user. I grant you that. Guns in the hands of a safe and sane person are not going to harm people.
That's correct.
The problem is that too many times guns have gotten into the hands of people who are either not sane or who have no conscience, in which case it's a very unsafe situation. And for the first time ever, we have had innocents who had absolutely nothing to do with debating this particular issue getting killed. And the society is showing signs that it's had enough. When you have 90% plus of polled individuals on an honest scientific poll, 2.5% margin of error, saying that they would support universal background check, and it's never had that support before. That's an indication that
universal background checks and closing those loopholes at gun shows and that sort of thing, all well and good. All well and good. I think my big problem is the naive attempt at banning specific weapons because they think that those weapons are more dangerous. And I'm not just talking rifles with 30-round clips. I'm talking pistols, revolvers. If it has a forward-facing auto-eject for the magazine, that's going to be on the ban list. Like, what? Really? What? Like, why? And this is only a Connecticut thing. All you're doing is you're going to make places like the Newington Gun Exchange or Hoffman's or Cabela's or wherever, you're going to hurt their business, and we're all just going to go up to Massachusetts or Rhode Island or New York. It doesn't make any sense.
Not New York. New York passed their legislation about 2 months ago, and it was almost as repressive, according to certain gun advocates, as Connecticut.
Well, don't look. Let's not get off topic here. The problem is that our governor is disagreeing with the President of the United States. The President of the United States does not want certain weapons banned. He wants the universal background checks, and he wants to close the loopholes as far as buying a gun at a gun show. That's what he wants.
With due respect,
what he's been saying. He said that in Colorado, and he said that in Hartford. He didn't mention anything else about all these other things about banning capacity magazines or registering your ammunition. The president doesn't believe that.
With due respect, he did ask for the reinstitution of the assault rifle ban. The legislation that had passed in 1994 and expired in 2004, one of the first things that he asked for within 2 weeks of the Sandy Hook massacre was the reinstitution of the assault rifle ban. He has backed off of that.
It's the dumbest ban in the world because all you're doing is saying, I don't like the color of that gun. That gun is black. That's an assault weapon. That's dumb. That's dumb.
It's not just...
It has a pistol grip. Big deal. So you have a bunch of rifles that look like what they did in California, where it's smooth and there's no pistol grip. That doesn't mean anything. This idea of military style or assault weapons, it's all a farce. Just because it has a certain shape to it doesn't make it any more or less deadly. You can still kill someone with a 7mm rifle as you can a .223 AR-15. You can still do the same thing.
You can kill somebody with
do it at a cheaper way.
You can kill somebody with a single-fire bolt-action rifle as well as you could kill somebody with a full-on machine gun. The problem is that the full-on machine gun can kill a lot more people in a very short period of time.
True. You know what? This is one of those things that I really want to get into because that is not a true statement. That is out there in the world as being fact. It's completely wrong. It's
Brian,
completely wrong.
It's
the
physics.
The assault weapons ban does not have anything to do with how many, when you pull the trigger, if the gun keeps firing. That has nothing to do with the assault weapons ban. The assault weapons ban says if it looks like an M16, we don't want it. If it's a semi-automatic, which means you pull the trigger and you can then pull it again to get another bullet out of the chamber. It does not mean a full auto. That's not the assault weapons ban. But this is why it drives me up the wall, because people don't understand guns. They don't understand that they are safe, that in the state of Connecticut, you can't buy you already, a year ago, you couldn't buy a fully automatic weapon. 10 years ago, you couldn't buy a fully automatic weapon. You could buy a semi-automatic, which is every pistol that you ever buy, which is you have semi-automatic shotguns, which the vice president not too long ago, I think it may have even been last week or the week before, said that's the gun you should buy for your home defense is a semi-automatic shotgun. That's what our vice president, Joe Biden, said. But this is the problem with the gun debate, is that we have people debating this and making laws that don't understand guns. They don't get it. And that's all I have to say about that.
This rant has
Now
been
I'm
brought to
pulling
you
into my
by...
driveway, and I have to go. So there'll be no 2-minute rebuttal.
Oh,
Thank
there
you,
will be,
Congressman.
but have a good night.
Sorry about that.
I think what we'll do is we'll pay some bills and then we'll come back and have an enlightened discussion. Just saying.
A 21st century audio pioneer, Hartford Online Radio Network. onthehorn.com.
Budwitz and Meyerjack PC is a large Connecticut-based CPA firm with offices in Cheshire and Farmington, Connecticut. Large enough to handle engagements of enterprises with annual revenues in excess of $100 million, yet small enough to cater to smaller businesses and individual clients who expect personalized attention from partners and staff. Client service is the cornerstone of our practice. Our clients have a fixed fee for their audit and tax work. What this means to the client is we're approachable. Personal communication and client services make for strong relationships. Budwitz and Meyerjack, certified public accountants.
Sandits Travel for business and leisure. We'll take you there. Sandits Travel has been proudly serving Connecticut since 1960. That's over 50 years. And we're ready for another 50 years of superior service. Whether you prefer to come in, call in, or log on, we invite you to explore how efficient, diverse, and fun it is to book through Sandits Travel. Save your money and your time with us. Sandits Travel. We'll take you there.
Click, load, listen on the horn. onthehorn.com.
I couldn't resist that. We're also brought to you by Deepwater Seafood of Avon. Have you been to the only fish market in Farmington Valley? Deepwater is located on Route 44 and is open 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. One of the best things about Deepwater is their fish are fresh. 3 deliveries daily to meet your needs. Deepwater has a menu of grilled items, scampi, fish and chips, soups, bisques, and chowders, and for your catering needs, authentic paella, cedar plank salmon sides, and always the traditional New England clam bake. Deepwater also has the very best, and I mean awesome, shrimp cocktail that you'll find anywhere. Call in your order at 860-676-9657, and they'll have your order ready for pickup when you arrive. Deepwater Seafood of Avon, not just for the halibut. And once you're done eating, you can visit centralctdental.com. Doctors Camp, Sambor, and Lupini for serious issues or routine checkups. Go nowhere else. Easy to get to on the Plainville-Farmington line. Call 860-747-5761 or make an appointment, easy for me to say, make an appointment online at centralctdental.com. All right, we're back. And contrary to what Brother Parker was lamenting earlier, the assault rifle ban isn't just about weapons that look bad. It isn't just because they have a pistol grip. Although, can you figure out, Brian, why a pistol grip on a rifle might actually be something that is less than desirable?
Can I? Yes.
And that would be because you can
Hide it.
plus pull it and aim
Easily.
it better.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Essentially, it's like, imagine an Uzi with a pistol grip. Not good. Just saying.
Keep that in mind.
And with due respect to Brother Parker about how it's, this wide assortment of things that have absolutely nothing to do with assault-style weapons, I beg to differ. The AR-15 is an assault-style rifle. It is made to fire semi-automatically, yes, but it is also made so that you don't have to reload it all that often. That's why it has 30 mag clips and 100 mag clips. That's so that the person who's using it doesn't have to stop. Just saying.
By the way, you can just as easily tape 2 10-round mags upside down.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really take that long. You pop your mag, you flip, bang, and you're right back at it. So.
Yep. And the police report indicated that the late Mr. Lanza fired 154 rounds. He wasn't in the building for more than 5
See, it was
to
under
6
under
minutes.
5 minutes.
Now, I will grant you that the first few shots of the 154 was him blowing out the lock so we could get in, okay? Which kind of makes the rest in that shorter period of time even more horrific to think about, because it took him about 3 or 4 shots to blow the lock open. And then he enters, and then he walks in. He doesn't start firing right away. He's stalking the hallways. Then he opens up. And when you think about it, that's roughly 145 to 150 rounds
In about
in
4
an
minutes.
even shorter period of time. Now, I will grant you that an AR-15 is probably pretty nice to have when you're on the firing line. It's probably pretty nice to have if you're doing some kind of military operation.
Yeah, if you're in combat.
But I can't think of any other reason why. I just can't. I can't think of any sane reason why. Because you use that jacked up gun going after, Bambi? There's going to be very little of Bambi left by the time you're done. And unless you're intending on meat tenderizing at the same time as you're bringing it down, I'm really not sure what the efficacy is of that particular weapon as a hunting item.
You're kind of left with hamburger, so you can make chili.
I mean, yeah, you'll bring the goose down, but all you'll have left is down. There ain't gonna be nothing left, just the feathers. Look, the Second Amendment essentially says that the right to bear arms shall not be abridged. It doesn't specify what the arms are. Arms can include swords. Arms can include dueling pistols. Arms can include any number of things. Back then they had grenades too, but grenades were not the hand grenades. They were a bomb that you had a fuse that you had to light and then either fire from a cannon or lob. Okay? That was an arm. Our government has seen fit to say, no, you don't need grenades. Our government has seen fit to say, no, you don't need Stinger missiles. You don't need bazookas. You don't need RPGs. So, in other words, just like how you cannot yell fire in a crowded theater because the First Amendment does not protect that, the Second Amendment doesn't protect every freaking weapon that we have come up with in the history of mankind. Yet the NRA would have us believe just that. The NRA would have us believe that if we were to regulate anything, we would descend the slippery slope and never be able to climb back to regain our rights. Wrong, Wayne. Wrong. We don't get to build a nuclear bomb in our garage. It's not legal. The Second Amendment doesn't protect that, but we still have regulated that.
Just in case.
Just saying. We are a society that has lived and breathed guns since before our inception.
Since we stole this land.
Pretty much. Do you know how we overtook the entire Northeast coast? It wasn't with guns.
Whiskey.
No, it wasn't whiskey. It was germ warfare.
No.
Smallpox.
Yep.
We had a bunch of diseases that in Europe we got used to, that the folks over here never even thought of breathing.
Yep.
Okay? And There is actually a story down in the Mashantuckets that I believe where they had ticked off the colonials. The colonials showed up en masse. They were pretty much in a fort. Okay? Lots of logs.
Mm-hmm.
The colonists couldn't do anything. So what did they do? They went and got blankets for people who had been sick, and they lobbed the blankets over the wall. And 10 days later, there was no one there to oppose them when they went through the front gates. Literally speaking, from the time that the first trappers started coming to the northeast coast, we're talking French, we're talking English, we're talking Spanish, we are talking also Portuguese. There were tens of millions of Native Americans all along the coast.
Mm-hmm.
When the Pilgrims showed up, 1/10.
Wow.
1/10. And it was because they basically got sick. Now, this wasn't intentional germ warfare, unlike certain instances afterwards when some of the colonists figured it out. But literally, it was beyond decimation. Now, quick history lesson. When you talk about decimation, what Caesar did when the 10th had basically cut and run on him,
Yeah.
he had them all line up. And he would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Come forward. And the other 9 were to beat him to death. Okay? And he did that all up and down the line. That's where we get the word decimation.
Yeah.
Okay? The 10th never ran on him again. What happened to the native population was not decimation. It was nonimation. It was 90% of their population died in a 10 to 15 year period.
Wow.
Okay? When the Pilgrims arrived, they talked about how they had come across 2 villages near the area of Plymouth Rock, okay, that were abandoned. And at first they thought, oh, they must be hiding in the woods. No. They weren't abandoned either. The original inhabitants died. Okay, they found the bones much later on.
Okay.
Okay. That's how we took over the United States of America. And of course, the guys and gals who didn't get sick, them we shot.
Well.
The biggest gun in the West that led to the winning of the West for the United States was the Winchester repeater.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because you didn't have to stop and load. You just go chick chick boom, chick chick boom, chick chick boom. Okay? That is the equivalent of the AR-15 now. Okay? And Winchester made those guns to be fairly accurate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the bore was pretty good. It was true. You didn't have a problem hitting your target. If you pointed at it, you were going to hit it. Okay? And the caliber bullet that was being used was actually pretty damn big. Okay? It was bigger than the 32. Okay? Put a big hole in you. Okay? And the idea was if you didn't hit the engine, at least hit his horse. The horse will go down.
And
End of
him.
engine.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what the English did to the French back in the 13 and the 1400s. They had the longbow. They would shoot the horse of the mounted knights because the French knights never walked. And the knights would then get crushed by their horses, or the horses would be so maddened that they would like careen into other horses and really cause chaos. Same thing with the Winchester. We don't need to do that anymore. Ergo, why the AR-15? I'm sorry. The logic doesn't compute. It's a Spockian, that's not logical. And I'm okay with people going out hunting. I think that hunting can be a very spiritual thing, to be one with nature, to be, in a sense, in touch with your forebears.
Sure.
But if you were going to be truly in touch with your forebears, you'd be using a spear,
Right.
not a gun.
Or a bow.
Or a bow. Nonetheless, aside from that bit of sophistry, I don't have a problem with people hunting with guns. I don't have a problem with people having guns for personal protection. I don't have a problem with people who like to use guns for sport purposes. Hey, who can hit the target better than me? Yay. I'm cool with that. What I'm not cool with is having a weapon that can kill 100 people in 5 minutes. The fact that Adam Lanza only killed 26 in that school was not because he wasn't trying. 150 rounds. Gee, 26 takedown out of 150, that's not very good shooting.
No.
And I'm not being sarcastic here. I'm not making fun of the tragedy. The point is, this was a target-rich environment, and it's a miracle that more kids didn't die. It's a miracle that more adults didn't die. And it wasn't for lack of trying. And we need to do something to stop the Adam Lanzas from trying again, because they will. And yeah, I get the fact that taking out certain weaponry out of the mix isn't going to solve the problem. There are more comprehensive aspects to this, like mental health reform. I'm all over that.
Mm-hmm.
I am in so much favor of that. It's not even funny. The one last thing that I will say in rebuttal to Brother Parker is look at the murder rates in Great Britain and Japan. And look at the murder rate in China. And look at the murder rate in Russia. And look at the murder rate in the United States. Who outstrips them all? We do. And why is that? Because in China, it's highly regulated as to who gets to have guns and when they get to use them. In Russia, it's a little less regulated. It's not as regulated as it used to be.
Right.
And the Russian mob, well, they are kind of busy, if you know what I mean. But they are not limited to guns. They also like the garrote and the knife. Just say it. And in Great Britain and Japan, it is significantly lower. Why? Because they have an absolute ban.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain instances where you are allowed to have guns at a gun range when you are hunting. But it is highly regulated in Great Britain. And for the most part, citizens are not allowed to own guns. What's the murder rate there? It is 1/10 of that of the United States. And in Japan, it's even more regulated.
Yep.
They don't even allow for hunting. They don't allow for having practice ranges. Why bother practicing with something that you're not allowed to own? Okay, the only people who are allowed to practice are the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy. I don't know if they have a Marine version over in Japan, but those are the only people who have guns. And their murder rate is less than Great Britain's. gee, I wonder. Now, again, our society has been built around individual freedoms. Our society has been built around the ability to protect oneself. Our society has been built on the premise that the government can be good, but it needs to be restrained because the individual is truly paramount. That is a simplistic way of describing the first 10 amendments.
Mm-hmm.
That is the core, however. And we fought for our freedom. We fought the Brits to their knees. And we embarrassed the crap out of them. Enough so that they said, "No, we're done. Terribly sorry. Must be going now. Having tea and crumpets with the king." It was a little mad, but, so are we. That's why we were fighting this war against you, Yanks.
He'll get over it.
I get the fact. Well, and then there was the Civil War. There was the Revolutionary War. There was the War of 1812. There were a couple of little skirmishes here and there. Shays' Rebellion. Who cares? The point is, the next big battle was the Civil War, where we were shooting each other. The only time that we surpassed the total kill count and the total casualty count of the Civil War for American war dead was in Vietnam. And why? Because we had so much better weapons. And so did they. So they could kill so many more people all at once. Haven't we had enough? Haven't we gotten to the point where we no longer need to look to the past to say, yeah, that musket's a great thing. It's a symbol of our freedom. Haven't we gone far enough? I don't know. And I can tell you the way it's looking in Washington right now, I don't think we have. Just saying. You've been awfully quiet.
I'm just letting you tear it up. What am I supposed to say? I just stepped out of the way and let you go. Nothing that I could add was going to either A, add anything to what you were saying, or B, slow you down. So I just let it go.
There is that, and that's why I love you as a co-host.
Sometimes you got to know when to back off. This was a pick your battles moment.
And it's quite clear that the NRA has picked their battles in Washington.
Correct.
Because, who would have thought that Colorado would beat New York with... No, actually, they were a week behind. I'm sorry. Who thought that they would be in tandem with New York on an assault weapons ban and gun safety legislation? Not gun control, gun safety.
Totally different.
They were weeks apart. And despite the fact that there was intensive lobbying, the governor of Colorado signed all that stuff into law.
Here's my question. As you are our counsel, can this go to the Supreme Court?
Oh,
this
it will.
new law, the new law.
Oh, it will.
Okay, because some of the things that I had seen, I just didn't think could possibly stand up.
Well, outright bans are constitutionally problematic.
Right.
They're hard to defend.
Right.
Registration and limitations, easier.
Okay.
Not necessarily going to pass constitutional muster too, but they are at least easier to defend within the confines of the Second Amendment arguments.
Because my guess was last week, as the governor was signing with all of those pens, the ink wasn't dry before the first lawsuit was thought up and the first attorney put on retainer. Because
the NRA definitely was choosing to battle it that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no question that somebody is, you see, the part of the problem is you can't go after the constitutionality of a law until it has actually been put into play. Now, the governor signing it into law arguably is the first put
step.
into play.
Right.
But usually it's easier to attack once it has actually been enforced.
Okay.
And that's when you will see both a constitutional question, not a question so much as a challenge in the criminal courts, as well as a civil suit that would immediately follow thereafter.
Yeah, I was figuring that as well.
Okay, the civil suit would have to follow the criminal, not because there's any particular rule that requires that, but in order to have the greatest impact with the justices, you have to have someone having been led away in shackles and then suing to get their freedom.
Okay.
In order for it to have the impact that they're looking for. Okay? We treasure our freedom considerably. In reverse order of priority: property, liberty, life. Okay? That's why death penalty cases are so hard to try. They are so hard to decide, because it is the ultimate right that we have that is being potentially threatened.
Taken away.
Our liberty is a close second. And so in order to have the oomph of the constitutional challenge that they would be looking for, they would need to have somebody willing to give up their liberty for a period of time. And they would allow for, under those circumstances, particularly when you're dealing with a new law, as long as it wasn't a violation of the law in the commission of another crime, i.e., it's simply that they were in possession of the magazines and didn't register them.
Right.
As opposed to using the magazines, not having registered them while robbing or killing someone.
Okay.
Okay, they would want it to be relatively clean. Why am I giving them strategy? But yeah, you won't see you probably won't see the first real heavy-duty lawsuit until January 2nd of 2014.
Okay.
Because the main mega provisions, particularly with the registration stuff, goes into effect January 1st, 2014.
Okay.
So January 2nd, that's when stuff happens.
Okay, that makes sense.
Well, yet another scintillating show.
Where does the time go?
We aim to please.
Click, load, listen on the horn. onthehorn.com.
I couldn't resist. Well, you've been listening to News Talk Tonight. I'm Dave Moore, your host. I've been joined by my co-host, Brian Lee.
Who really just get out of the way for a little while tonight. I could have been reading War and Peace.
Yeah, well, once Brian Parker lit a fire, I couldn't help it. I just couldn't help it.
Again, I just get out of the way.
Well, News Talk Tonight is part of On the Horn, onthehorn.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We've been brought to you by Amazon.com, Gateway Financial Partners, Sandits Travel, Sherpa Technologies, Budwitz and Meyerjack CPAs, Deepwater Seafood of Avon, and CentralCTDental.com. By the way, it is April 9th. You might want to use Budwitz sooner rather than later. Just saying. We'll be back next week with more exciting news and more stuff about Connecticut. I promise. See you next week.